valiantly stepped in. So grateful to her, and so we don't have our regular welcome and music and all that. But yes, the sound is working. Okay, I'm very excited to begin what will be my last real series at Ikar. Last kind of I'm going to continue actually teaching my Parsha class, for example, in perpetuity. But this is the last sort of 5-part series. This is my last month at Ikar, and so it's a very meaningful way for me to end, because this is really a class. This is really a kind of a really deliberate focus on practice, and practice is a big part of our tradition. And sort of like study and do. That's the tradition. Torah, mitzvot, practice. And I have felt that especially in this time as a community rabbi, as a pulpit rabbi, that practice is. I have felt I used to be kind of a library Jew, sit and study, and that's the best thing in the world. And once you're in a community, you realize the way that these practices create a structure and a rhythm for our lives and our lives together, our sort of lives together in this sacred space that we create through our practice. I think that one of the things I've come to believe and to feel, especially working in a community the way I have for the last 5 years, is that one of the most central themes in Jewish life, or at least one that is so central and not spoken of as frequently as I would expect, is the theme of rhythm. Rhythm is a huge part of the Jewish experience. A lot of what this whole tradition, I think, is meant to instill in us is a sense of rhythm, a kind of a beat to our lives, a kind of a pacing and a beat. And the most obvious version of that is Shabbat, that weekly rhythm of Shabbat. But that idea that our lives would be a kind of structured around time and would be a kind of response to time, that's a central notion from the very, very start in this tradition. In fact, the very start of this tradition, you might say, the moment when we left Egypt, the tradition starts when God says, this month, look up at the moon now. Look at this new moon. This is the beginning. This month, this calendar, this time system, this begins our tradition. We kind of begin in time, and by claiming time and by responding to time. And that's what I think a rhythm is. A rhythm is like time plus action. The time is just flowing, and we respond to it. We imagine a rhythm like pounding out a beat. You are marking time by doing something to mark time. And that's a big part of what Jewish practice is marking time. There's a whole world of discussion in the categorization of Jewish law that speaks of different kinds of commandments. There's positive commandments and negative commandments, meaning commandments you do, and then things you don't do, like thou shalt not kill. Right. So, and then there's also commandments shehazman grama, that time causes them to be activated, like Shabbat. I light the candles because it's the end of the week. And then other mitzvot, lo hazman grama, like the time does not cause, like I always keep kosher. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. Okay. So with those categories in mind, what we're going to be looking at together is the mitzvot aseh shehazman grama, those active commandments, those mitzvot that you do, and you do as a response to time, to some unit of time. And there are some basic units of time in this tradition. There's the day. There is, as I said, most famously, the week. There's the month, which is, as I said, the first one to be named, actually. Before even we get Shabbat, we get the new moon. There's the year, which is sort of the grand masterpiece of Judaism, the calendar. And then there is the life, and that is also a cycle that can be responded to and marked and charted. Okay, so we're going to take a look at all of those cycles, all of those rhythms and structures of time, and think about how we respond to them. And then in that sense, what we're talking about is practice. And one of the words for practice in this tradition is halacha, which we sometimes translate as law, but the word halacha really means going, or the path, or the walking, the going forth. How do we move about in the world? And that's really our subject for the next 5 weeks. How do we move through a day, move through a week, move through a year, move through a life with these rhythms, with these markers, with these moments of significance, moments of acknowledgement, moments of consecration and ritualization of time itself. Okay. So this is a class that is was designed for, first and foremost, a little cohort that is here, I think, with us. You can wave if you're out there, but of the adult B'nai Mitzvah students. We have this wonderful phenomenon at our shul where folks who are just discovering Jewish life and practice never had a bar bat mitzvah, and sometimes they did have one, and it just didn't feel substantive enough. And people are kind of reclaiming this ritual, and this ritual to be a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah means to be a child of the commandments. That's the literal word. Bar mitzvah, son of the commandments. Bat mitzvah, daughter of the commandments. B'nai mitzvah, children of the commandments. And that means to take on the obligations of the commandments in the kind of most classical formulation. But the point of a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah or an adult bar bat mitzvah, thinking about this, is that one of the things this ritual signifies, this ceremony of B'nai mitzvah, is trying to strengthen one's practice. We're trying to find new ways to develop one's practice. And so you folks who are in that track, one of the ways we prepare for that is by learning to chant a section of the Torah. And maybe you were in Hillel's trope class, and hopefully this is kind of following on that. Now, that another thing that we want to be preparing you for is a recommitment or a new commitment to your Jewish practice. And so we're going to be really basic, take you through the basic steps. What are the basic steps of Jewish practice? And so it's a good class for those folks. It's also a good class for folks who are on a conversion path or are interfaithing, or are just like some arrangement where you are coming into something, a moment of discovery and filling out and strengthening your Jewish life. And it can also be for you in the middle of a Jewish life with no particular reason, but just an urge to strengthen and discover and kind of map out and refresh yourself on these basic rhythms of Jewish living. And if and I'm gonna try to stay basic. So if it's this class is not for you, if this is all you already do this and it's all old news to you, because we're really going to try to take the time to just move through the order of the day. Today we're going to look at one Jewish day. Okay, so it's like what's the novel Ulysses, right? James Joyce's Ulysses is just one day, and it's like this big fat novel. So that's if you do what it takes to get through a Jewish day is like, it would feel like one of those bookshelves over there. But let's give it a shot. Okay. I want to just say a blessing. This may be the first time today studying Torah as the day ends, studying Torah. So we're going to talk a lot about blessings tonight. One of the blessings we have, Shelo hazman grama, that the time does not cause, but anytime you're sitting down to study Torah. Although the truth is, we tend to say it first thing in the morning, because hopefully there's Torah in the morning. So we'll say this blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu La'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay. Okay, so here's what we're going to take a look at tonight. And we're going to try and get just a really basic sense of what happens in a Jewish day. But before we do, I want to give us, I'm kind of speaking of it in a general way up front, but I want to give you a feel for that Jewish commitment to time consciousness in our practice, in having a practice that is structured around time. And the way that I want to make that point, and I wish I remember who, somebody taught me this, and I don't remember who it was, but it's a familiar enough thing that someone taught it to me and now I teach it to you. But this is an important comparative look at two different Jewish legal codes. And when you look at them one after another, you can see how there's an entirely different orientation, an entirely different focus. The first one we're going to look at is Maimonides' Mishneh Torah. How does Maimonides start? Maimonides maybe wrote the all-time greatest legal code, but Maimonides was kind of trying to do it all. Maimonides was trying to summarize all of the Talmud. Maimonides was trying to summarize all of Judaism and did so pretty masterfully. So, and Maimonides, remember, was also a philosopher. So he was interested in not just Judaism and the details and the laws, though this is a legal code, but Judaism, the meaning of it all and the purpose of it all. And he starts very much with like the reason for it all. Okay, so here's Maimonides, the opening. I want to compare two moments of just like the opening of a legal code. And Maimonides doesn't sound very legal at all. Here is the beginning of the Mishneh Torah, where he begins and says, Yesod HaYesadot, the foundation of all foundations, and the pillar of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being who brought into being all existence. Very philosophical language, very kind of like middle-aged kind of philosophy. There is a primary mover, there is a primary form of existence. All existence comes out of that existence. All the beings of the heavens, the earth, and what is in between them came into existence only from the truth of its being. Okay, very nice, very important. We could talk about that for the next hour. That seems like, is that God? That sounds like God. As philosopher's God anyway. But that's where Maimonides starts, and it's a good place to start. That's what if we're going to learn about Judaism, shouldn't we start with the figure at the center of it all, God itself? Okay, so that's one mode of study, and we could philosophize and talk about the meaning of it all. And this is all to contrast with another mode of study that's going to be our course, which is much more practical. Now, we're going to go from the Middle Ages and fast forward a little bit to the 1500s when the Shulchan Aruch, if Maimonides wrote the greatest of the legal codes, Shulchan Aruch is really the most famous of the legal codes, because even though Maimonides' work was a masterpiece, it's the Shulchan Aruch that people really started to use. And that's because it is more usable. And with that in mind, take a look at where Rav Yosef Karo, who wrote this legal code, where he starts. What are his opening words? I mean, Maimonides' opening words are Yesod HaYesodot, the foundation of all foundations, V'amud HaChachma, and the pillar of wisdom. Where does Rav Yosef Karo start? Let's look at the second text on this sheet. The Shulchan Aruch starts with 1:1, the law of getting up in the morning. It's like kind of law is almost a funny translation here, but the law of getting up in the morning. And that you can already tell he's in a different place. Where is he going to start? He starts with waking up. With waking up. That's where his Jewish practice conversation starts. And what does he say? He says one should strengthen oneself like a lion to get up in the morning. Yitkaber ka'ari lamod baboker. Strengthen oneself like a lion. It's a motivational thing. It's a consciousness forming idea, but it's all about what do you do when you wake up? And the language here is really beautiful. Lamod baboker lavodat boro, to get up in the morning to serve one's creator, sheyehu me'orer hashachar. So that it is you who wakes up the dawn. Right? The dawn doesn't wake you up, you wake up the dawn. Okay. So two things here. One, you're you're getting up and you maybe you're like me, you're not a morning person. You got to strengthen yourself like a lion. There's something here that's really a kind of motivational speech. Strengthening yourself like a lion. We'll soon see how we do that, but that's his first order of business. And implicit, you wake up in the morning. Implicit is you get up pretty early. And that's one of the things I don't like about this tradition that I love so much, is that it really wants you to get up early in the morning. And so thankfully, this is like the get up with Nate's idea. Nate's the first rays of the sun. And if we're talking about Jewish practice, we might as well mention that one of the time-honored Jewish practices is getting up with the dawn. But luckily, there is commentary here in the Shulchan Aruch, which is written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, a Sephardic Spanish, and then in the land of Israel thinker. But the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, comes in and gives like the Ashkenazi gloss, meaning, well, these are the practices that in Europe for us, like weak, pale white people. I was like, oh, it's still dark in the morning. I'm joking, but here's what the Ramah says. The Ramah says, at the very least, one should not get up after the time when the congregation prays. Okay, so maybe you should get up at the first rays of sunlight, or maybe you should just get up in time to get to shul to pray with your community. But one way or another, you got to get up. Okay, and I hope you remember that. I hope that's an illustration of what kind of learning we're going to be doing and how different a conversation that is about Judaism. Shall we have a conversation about what it all means and why we do it and what God is anyway and how did we come to know God and where does this story begin? Or shall we have a conversation about what do you do when you get up in the morning and how do you move through your day, right? And that's the conversation we're going to have together. Or to be honest, because of the nature of this material, it's not going to be much of a conversation. We're going to try to move through it, but we'll pause if necessary. We'll certainly take questions at the end, okay? So let's get into it, right? The Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, this is 1550, this book is published. And so from then on, it's clear that the first things first is getting up in the morning like a lion. And so how do you summon that? How do you find that roar, that lion's roar in the morning? Well, the answer is that your roar is going to sound a little like this. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. I give thanks before you. This modeh, or in the feminine modah, and depending on which one you use, modeh modah ani lefanecha. I give thanks before you, ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, living and everlasting King, for you have returned my soul or my breath into me with mercy. In other words, I'm still alive. Great is your faith. Great is your faith in me. Great is your faith. Okay, and here it is, just in case you're holding on to this sheet, here's the transliteration. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmasi rabba emunatecha. The idea is, this is the first lesson in Jewish living. Wake up in the morning, modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Do I do that every morning? Probably, must admit, don't do it every single morning, but should do it every morning. That's the idea. The first things you say, first words you say are gratitude. Gratitude. First thing you say, acknowledge, I am alive today. I am alive. That is good. I am alive today. Okay, just that, nothing else. I have breath this morning. I took a breath. Okay, that's the first thing in the day. So gratitude, start your day with gratitude. And the other reason that we say this prayer first thing in the morning, I taught a little more extensively on this in another class. So maybe some of you remember, what is the reason we say modeh ani or modah ani and not anything else as the first words in the morning? Some of you probably will know. The reason is it does not contain the name of God. Okay, and the idea is like, you're still in bed, you've got crust in your eyes, you're like, you're naked, you're like, hair's all a mess. So you're not going to say God's name. You're not going to say a blessing. You're not ready for that yet, but you can say, whew, thank God I'm alive, right? But you don't say God. Thank Melech Chai V'Kayam, the living and everlasting King, that I'm alive. Okay. And, I'm presuming, let me just say this at the outset. I want to presume something that is not often presumed, I think. I'm presuming that we are a community that is concerned with practice, but also a community that is going to have different practices and going to modulate our practices. And I mean to say that often the presumption is it's all or nothing. Either you're interested and you see yourself as obligated, or you're not doing anything, right? Or the presumption is it doesn't matter. None of us are obligated. We can do whatever we want. Maybe this is beautiful to you. Maybe it isn't. I'm trying to position this conversation somewhere in the middle, which is this is Jewish living. You want to know how to live Jewishly? This is one of the rhythms of Jewish life, but it isn't all or nothing, for God's sake. It's like, it's a matter of integrating and fitting in the pieces that are going to strengthen your sense of that rhythm, of that connection. These are just gifts, and you should take them, but you'll take as many as you can that you can fit into your life. And of course, you should be building your practice slowly. It wouldn't make any sense to try to take it on all at once. That's one of the great mistakes that people make in either Jewish growth or Jewish recruitment, is trying to get people to go from 0 to 613 all at once, right? That's how many commandments there are. And that's not a healthy, talk about rhythm. That's not a healthy rhythm to take. So I'm going to present all of these as tools and mitzvot and obligations, yes, but also assume that let's see what pieces of this we can begin to integrate. And I say all of that because maybe you're already thinking, I don't know, I want to be the first words in my morning, Melech Chai V'Kayam, this, who is this king anyway? And wait, let's get back to the theological conversation. What am I talking to in the first place? Fine. But at least moda'ani, at least wake up in the morning and say, I am grateful that I woke up this morning. That's like Jewish practice 101. Okay. Now what's 102 and 103? So let's start to talk a little bit about how do we move through the morning? There are 3 first moves in the morning. 3 first moves. One, we've just covered, is gratitude. The second one, and remember, you weren't ready to say any blessings because you weren't ready to pronounce God's name. Time to get yourself ready by going to the bathroom and washing your hands. Okay, that's certainly one of the ways we start our day. So go to the bathroom, wash your hands, and then say a blessing for the washing of your hands, and a blessing for going to the bathroom. And in fact, we try to separate them. So yes, you will wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, of course, that's just hygienic. But actually the way that we try to do it is we say mo'adani lefanecha, then we wash our hands as a separate act. And it's a beautiful ritual. Talk about gifts of our tradition. Beautiful ritual. Some people even keep a basin of water near their bed in a large, a pour in a larger basin, so that they don't even have to, they wake up and then just sort of roll over and wash their hands and say a blessing. And the blessing is al netilat yadayim, al netilat yadayim. So let me just note here in this source sheet, these 3 moves. 1, modeh or modah, gratitude. Second thing, getting ourselves ready, clean, prepared to say other blessings, al netilat yadayim, hand washing. And then you don't have to go to the bathroom right away if you don't have to go to the bathroom, but the first time you do go to the bathroom, you will say a long blessing. We're not going to look at the text of it tonight, because tonight is more like, take notes on what the steps are. We could study the text another time, but al netilat yadayim is the end of the blessing that ends with the practice of taking up the hands or washing the hands. And asher yatzar is the beginning of the blessing after we go to the bathroom, which blesses God, asher yatzar, who has formed us. And it's a blessing, speaking of gratitude, it's a blessing that thanks God that we have bodies that function and can actually relieve us and take in and take out as necessary. And that's like a huge principle, right? Gratitude preparing my body to say blessings. And then once my body is in its functioning, thank God I have a body. Thank God my body is working. And you know what? Maybe my body's not working in some ways, but it went to the bathroom. So thank God for that. Just that. We have different bodies. We have different movements of our body, but if we can, relieve ourselves, that in itself is something worthy to be grateful for. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Modeh ani al netilat yadayim asher yatzar. Okay, we have now started saying blessings. We started saying, we're up in the morning, we're moving about, and we started saying blessings. And blessings are going to be one of the key themes that move us through the Jewish day. We started saying them, we're not going to stop saying them. In fact, there is a tradition that one should say 100 blessings a day, 100 blessings a day. So how are you going to do that? You have to do things throughout your day that require blessings. You can knock a bunch out in your prayers. So, there's 19 in every one of the prayers, easy. So you can start there. But saying 100 blessings a day, you've now said 2, the washing of the hands and the one for going to the bathroom. There are in the prayer book, there are a bunch of morning blessings, just a series of opening the day blessings. But I'm actually more interested for our purposes, for starting to feel the rhythm of Jewish time. I want to show you the way these blessings first appeared in the Talmud, in the first tractate of the Talmud, which imagines that you start saying blessings like this. Is a beautiful, very important text for thinking about what I've been saying, this rhythm, this response to the moment in front of us. So upon hearing the sound of the rooster, one should recite, "Blessed is God who gave the rooster understanding to distinguish between day and night." So imagine, thank God for the alarm clock. That is a blessing I've never made. But thank God for the alarm clock. But thank God for the world outside me that continues to exist, for the natural world that is moving. Right? And then you open your eyes and you should recite, "Blessed are you, God, who gives sight to the blind." Right? Who gives, really meaning gives us sight at all. And I opened my eyes and I can see, so I make a blessing on that. And there's lots of debate, by the way, as to whether a blind person actually says this. Okay, but that's for another time. Upon sitting up, one should recite, "Blessed is God who releases the bound." Upon dressing, one should recite, "Blessed is God who clothes the naked." Upon standing up straight, one should recite, "Blessed is God who straightens the bent over." Upon descending from one's bed to the ground. This is like just swiveling around and putting your feet on the ground, okay? This is the idea. Every single movement you make, you would bless it. You would say, "Oh, look, I have legs." And in this case, "Oh, look, there's a floor. Blessed is God who spreads the earth above the waters." In other words, there's a floor for me to walk on. Thank God. Okay, I start to walk. "Blessed is God who makes firm the steps of man." Okay, that's actually man there, gaver. Blessed is God that I can walk. Right? And if you've ever had a hard time walking, you know that it's a privilege to walk. So you make a blessing on it. Upon putting on shoes, that's also a privilege to have shoes. "Blessed is God who's provided me with all I need." Upon putting on a belt, one should recite, "Blessed is God who girds Israel with strength." Now, it's quite lofty, right? Upon spreading a shawl upon his head, one should recite, "Blessed is God who crowns Israel with glory." And that shawl now tells you you're about to get into prayer. So let's stop right there. But you can feel the way the rabbis are imagining you move through your day. Oh, I can hear, I just heard something, I'll make a blessing. I can walk, I'll make a blessing. I have clothes, whatever it is. Took a sip of water. The idea is you would respond. Now, this isn't something that would happen at a precise time. In some ways, as a response to your natural rhythms, but it's happening in the morning. It's the first moments of all of these things, and you do it every single day. And we still recite these blessings, but we have moved them. I think there was some anxiety that maybe these blessings wouldn't get said at home. We have to make sure people say them. So we put them in the Siddur so that you would say them as part of your morning prayers in shul. But this is the idea, as you start your day with blessing. You may notice, by the way, wait a minute, didn't Rabbi Kasher say earlier, you don't say any blessings until you've washed your hands. And yes, that is precisely why this system has gotten kind of worked out. Like, wait, first say Modani, and then wash your hands, and then go to the bathroom, and then say that blessing, and then start to say these things. So it's not exactly, we don't do it the same way that the Talmud suggests, but it's a great illustration of what it means to move through your day, just responding to every little thing with a blessing. So one of our primary tools for Jewish practice is blessing. That's one of the primary categories of Jewish practice, of mitzvot, of halacha. Something happens and I make a blessing over it. Maybe the most obvious and classic example of that is I'm about to eat food. What a blessing that is. I'm going to make a thank God for giving me this food, this apple, this sandwich, this Coca-Cola, whatever it is. So that's, if you knew nothing about Jewish life or practice, one of the first things you would start to pick up as you looked around is people mumbling before they do things, before they eat a bite from an apple, right? And that is indeed one of the primary movers throughout the day, is the tool of making a blessing. Okay, so that's what it looks like when you're in your house. Now let's think about beginning to leave the house. So the morning is actually a huge piece. We've taken up a half an hour just talking about the morning, and that's a big part of what where a Jewish day lies, is at the beginning and at the end. You are free to then go about your day. And one of the great things about this tradition is that not every moment is regulated. A lot is, but go on, have a good life, enjoy the rest of you. God is not constantly scrutinizing and watching over your every move, but you are trying to implant that consciousness throughout the day. So you have tools for doing it throughout the day. And one of those tools is the blessing. But okay, you're done in the morning, you're dressed, you put on your belt, you girded yourself, you're ready for what? To leave the house. Let's first just talk about leaving the house, and then we'll talk about what you do when you're out there. Okay. Now you're all dressed. You've said your blessings. You washed your hands, and you leave the house. Now, what do you do when you leave the house? This is also Jewish practice 101 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. What do you do? I see some people doing it with their hands. You touch the mezuzah, and you give your hand a kiss. Right? There's different customs around this, I must say. Different customs. What do you do? My practice has always been you touch the mezuzah and you take some of the blessing from the mezuzah, right? Some people actually have the custom of kissing the mezuzah. When we look at the earliest formulations of the mezuzah, we'll see that it's a little unclear what it's for. What is that mezuzah for? So the mezuzah, I'll just say, since we're doing Judaism 101, is a piece of parchment. We'll soon see what's inside, that is affixed to the door on the right side facing in when you're standing looking inwards. And it's required that it at least be on the threshold door of the house, though many people have it on every doorway of the house except for the bathroom. Just feels that's not appropriate. So there's a custom, right? You've just finished your morning. Now, what's Jewish practice as you leave the house? You kiss the mezuzah. Now, where does that come from? Or you acknowledge the mezuzah. I say kiss, and kiss isn't even. I couldn't call that like Jewish law. You must kiss the mezuzah. You must put up a mezuzah. That is actually mandated by the tradition. Kissing it is a custom. Right? Acknowledging it is really the idea. And here's where that tradition starts. Well, not really where it starts. Where it really starts, some of you, but here's where it gets discussed in the Talmud. So you're leaving the house, and Rava says, one of our rabbis, Rava says it's a mitzvah. It's a commandment to place the mezuzah in the handbreadth adjacent to the public domain. So right near the outside. What is the reason for this? The rabbis say that it was in order that one encounter the mezuzah immediately. Meaning, why does it have to be at the threshold door? Because you should see it right away when you're coming home. Now, we're talking about leaving the house, but it seems like here what they're talking about is coming home. And then Rabbi Hanina jumps in and gives an opinion that really stuck. People tend to think of the mezuzah as serving this function. Rabbi Hanina from Surah, we've got a surah, I think, in the group. So this is maybe the original formulation of her name. Rabbi Hanina from, no, that's not true, actually. She's a surah like Sarah. Rabbi Hanina from Surah says, it is in order to protect the house. Okay? It's in order to protect the house. So that's certainly an idea that's out there. The mezuzah protects the home. But you know what? For our purposes, that doesn't matter. That's theological speculation. That's like sort of value speculation. What's important for us is that the practice is that it's there when you leave your house and when you come in. And what is it that's there? It's these words. What are the words? The Shema. The Shema. And the Shema, I said blessings, brachot, that's one of our primary tools for moving throughout the day. Another primary practice or tool for moving out throughout the day is the practice of the Shema, the words of the Shema, which the words of the Shema, it turns out, will find us at many points throughout the day, okay? So let's take a look at the words of the Shema just to see how this is one of the rawest examples of a little piece of Torah that turns in directly into Jewish practice. Sometimes you have to filter down through the ages, through the legal codes to get to Jewish practice. But here, we just read it straight. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's interpretation that tells you what the words mean. But we read it straight out of the book and we do it. And let's take a look at what it looks like here. Okay, I want to just jump down here to the Shema. Okay, so the Shema, you may know, is these words. The Shema, you may know, is these words. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, the eternal is our God, the eternal alone. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's the first line. And then it says, Ve'ahavta, these are all famous words. You shall love the eternal God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Then this is the critical part for us. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele. And these words, presumably the words that you just said, or the words that you are saying right now, these words which I command you today shall be on your heart. And you shall teach them to your children. Recite them, and here's where the practice comes in. Recite them when you're sitting at your home and when you're walking on the road. When you walk on the road, I think that's probably the right translation. When you lie down and when you rise. Tie them as a sign upon your hand and let them be totafot, here's a word that nobody quite understands, between your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay, that's where the mezuzah comes from. It comes from the Shema. The Shema tells you to take the words of the Shema and bang it up on your door. The Shema says that. And so that's how we get that Jewish practice, is to take those very words, the ones we just read in Hebrew, written down, and the other paragraphs of the Shema, and you put them on the doorway there so that when you leave your house and when you come home, you think, oh, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, right? Or you think of protection, or you just think of Judaism, or you just think of God, whatever it is, but you have that moment of encounter when you leave and when you come back. And we signify that often with a kiss. And the way I did it was like you touch the mezuzah and kiss it on the way out for protection. You don't do it on the way in, but lots of people have different practices. So I won't go into that fine detail. But the idea is that the Shema is sort of with you as you leave your house. The Shema is with you when you come back. And as you also saw, and this is another major institution of Jewish life, is you also saw the Shema should be recited in the morning and in the evening. Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening. Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening. This is when people are asking me, how do I begin to develop a Jewish practice? I usually tell them, here are the first two things to do. One, modani or modani, that gratitude statement in the morning. And two, say the Shema in the morning and the evening. Just the first line, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear Israel, the Lord is our. That's the beginning of Jewish prayer. And that's the beginning of Jewish practice. Just say those words once in the morning and once in the evening. That is the first major structure to the day that our tradition offers us. You will have brackets, one bracket in the morning and one bracket in the evening. You will frame your day with these words, and you will frame your doorpost with these words. You will walk through the doorpost, through these words as you walk through the doorpost. And so the doorpost of your day is framed with these words in the beginning and in the end. Okay. So the Shema itself is like just that paragraph that we read. That's a whole primer in Jewish practice in and of itself. Just to take that idea here, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. We have a personal relationship with the God. We believe that God is the ultimate force in the universe, whatever that means. But we keep repeating these words. We study those words. We repeat them to our children. Those are values principles, and they're commandments as well. But in terms of Jewish practice, you will say the Shema once in the morning, at least. You will say Shema once at night, at least, or twice, at least, that is to say. We end up saying it more times because the practice is to say it once in the morning at home, and then we'll say it again we'll repeat it in our morning prayer. Once when we get just before bed. Those are the primary expressions, but we'll say it also in our evening prayer just to make sure. So we end up saying the Shema 4 times a day minimum. But they're brackets. They serve as brackets in that way. Okay. So we leave the house. We have presumably now we've learned. We said Modani. We washed our hands. We went to the bathroom. We said a blessing for going to the bathroom. There are other things we could have said a blessing on. We could have eaten some food in the morning. We don't have the practice anymore of saying the blessings as we put on our shoes, but I've heard people who took that on, and you get the idea. We say a Shema in the morning that some people will wait to say with their morning prayers, but we have to make sure we say it in the morning, and then we leave the house and we kiss the mezuzah and we leave the house. Now, where do we go once we leave the house? If it was like, this is a Jewish day, right? So we're gonna like really. Now, I can't say I do this every day myself, and I'm a practicing Jew, a rabbi to boot. And I can't say I head to the synagogue every single morning, but that's the idea. Remember what the Ramah said from the beginning. You should get up in time to join the congregation for prayers. At least get up in time for to potentially join them for prayers. And so here we come upon the third major structural institution in the Jewish day, and that is the trifold prayer system. Okay, there are 3 standard prayers in every Jewish day, and sometimes there are more, but there are at least 3 in every Jewish day, and they are Aravit or Mariv, the evening prayer, Shacharit, the morning prayer, and Mincha, the afternoon prayer. Now, I said them in the order that we think now of a Jewish day. Here I'm talking about a Jewish day. It's a little funny because the Jewish day starts at night, doesn't it? So it's evening first, there was evening, and there was morning. But actually, let's follow the Shulchan Aruch, who said that the first thing that he imagines the day starts as we imagine it in the morning. So the morning prayer, the afternoon prayer, and the evening prayer. So let's take a look at just the source for that, or at least an explanation of that. Maimonides tells us, Maimonides, who we started with, that same guy who was talking about the primary being that preceded all of their beings and was in the sort of the clouds of being itself. That same guy, when he tells us about the prayers, he tells us that there are 3 prayers, and this is how we got them. Wait, hold on, let me go back. Okay. Here's Maimonides again. The sages decreed that the number of prayers correspond to the number of sacrifices, meaning once upon a time, there were daily sacrifices in the temple, and our prayer system, that trifold, whatever prayer system, is based on, when I talk about Jewish rhythms, one of the way those rhythms are developed is to echo or mirror the ancient life in ancient Israel. And life in ancient Israel, there were sacrifices twice a day, and it was a big ceremony. It was a big part of our national worship, but the temple was destroyed, and we don't do that anymore. So to honor that and to remember it, we have 2 prayers every day. And the prayer that corresponds to the daily morning sacrifice is called the Shacharit prayer, just to italicize that so we can note it. The prayer that corresponds to the daily sacrifice offered in the afternoon is called the Mincha prayer. And you may have noticed that's only 2. What happened to the 3? And here's a little fun fact for you. The evening prayer is not obligatory, as are the morning and Mincha prayers, or I should say the Shacharit and Mincha prayers. Nevertheless, the Jewish people in all the places they have settled are accustomed to recite the evening prayer and have accepted upon themselves as an obligatory prayer. So isn't that interesting? That actually, when the rabbis designed the prayer system, they imagined we would say Shacharit and Mincha in order to parallel the way we used to do the sacrifices. And then eventually the custom became, no, we should say one for the nighttime as well. Now, why that is? Well, there's a whole psychology there. I mean, and the psychology is really the question. It's a question that gets to the heart of our conversation in some ways, though we're not going to process it much right now. The question is this a good amount of check-ins throughout the day with your creator, with your truth, with your higher being? It's 3, right? Or should it be 2 or 3? What times of the day do you need to stop and meditate? That's a really good question. Maybe just once, right? Or maybe 5, right? Like the Muslims do. There's a great story in the Hadiths, which I think are sort of like the Muslim Talmud. So it's not the Quran itself, but it's a great story of how they got to 5 prayers. And like apparently Muhammad goes up to like the 7th heaven or whatever, and God sends him down and tells him to pray like 100 times. I think it's 100 times a day. And he's heading back down to tell his followers to pray 100 times a day. And he bumps into Moses on the way down. And Moses says, hey, brother, what are you up to? And he's like, I'm just going to go deliver these 100 prayers to my people. And Moses is like, that's a bad idea. They are not going to do that. Believe me, I have managed a people before. There's no way they can pray 100 times a day. So Muhammad's like, interesting. Okay, Musa. So he goes back up. And it seems like it's based on the Abraham arguing of God story. It's like, goes up and down because he comes back. He's like, got it to 50, got it to 40, got it to 30, got it to 10. And every time he comes down, Moses is like, not going to work, not going to work. No way the Jews are going to. It was bad enough getting them to pray 3 times a day. He comes back down at the last time and he sees we got 5 prayers left. God's agreed to 5. And Moses is like, I'm telling you, go back up one more time. And this is like the Islamic twist. Muhammad says, no, I'm embarrassed. I can't ask for any less than this. So it's a little bit of like the end. It's like, haha, you Jews are too lazy. You only do it 3 times. We do it 5 times. But the point is, it's hard. That's 5 times is hard, right? And 10 times is hard. And 3 times is hard, right? So there's a lot of discussion to be had there around whether this morning prayer, afternoon prayer, and evening prayer is the perfect rhythm of the day, but that's the one that we have inherited. And what that means at a minimum is that 3 times throughout the day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening, you should have some kind of sit down and breathing and checking in with yourself and checking in with your God and just settling your spirit. And my goodness, that's good advice, I promise. Whatever you're doing at a minimum, take 3 times a day to take a deep breath, right? But the most developed form of that is to say the liturgy that includes a standing meditation. And the most developed form of that is to go to a synagogue and say it with 9 other Jews, right? That's the minyan, the quorum, right? And that's like, we are sort of scratching at the surface of Jewish practice, but if you get into that rhythm, you're all the way in at the deep end. And it's a powerful rhythm. And I must say, I'm a pretty lazy person in general, and I'm also kind of a loner, and I'm also not a morning person. There are many reasons why I have a very bad prayer practice, but I mean, I say my prayers, but it's like mumble them in my living room. But I will tell you the times when I, either because I'm a rabbi or because I had a year of Kaddish, of mourning, when I felt like I had to go every single day and say it every single day, changes your life. And yet, again, don't dive in at the deep end if you're not ready for this, but that's every day there are 3 prayers. Now, on Shabbat, there are more prayers. And on the holidays, sometimes there are even more prayers, but just start with 3 prayers a day, or just start with 2 utterances of the Shema, once in the morning and once at night. And in fact, this is sort of the last major fact of our evening. The way that once the prayers began to sort of come together and be designed to be 3 prayers, morning, afternoon, evening, and then there are these 2 Shemas, one in the morning and one in the evening. As I said, the idea is you would say it when you wake up and when you go to sleep. But they figured, well, why don't we just stick the Shema in the morning prayer and in the evening prayer? So Mincha here in the middle does not have a Shema. In fact, the most basic way to say what is in our prayers is in the morning there's a Shema and there's an Amidah. In the afternoon there's an Amidah. Amidah is the word for the standing meditation. So morning, Shema, Amidah, here as well, standing meditation. Afternoon, just a standing meditation, Amidah. Evening, Shema and Amidah. There are other blessings that surround them, but those are the basics of those 3 prayers. And those 3 prayers are the basics of a Jewish day that is, again, most of your time is your own. Lots of stuff to think about in the morning, little rituals to go through in the morning, and soon we'll close with the rituals of the evening. But the basics, but most of the day is your own. But the basic structure that gives your day a kind of spiritual overlay or spiritual marking points or consciousness check-ins, however you want to think about this. The basic structure is the 3 prayers, the 2 Shmas, and then little blessings peppered throughout. Little blessings that respond. You're going to eat an apple. You're going to go to the bathroom. Every time you go to the bathroom, you'll say that first Asher Yatzar that you said in the morning. You'll say it again. So there's many. When nature calls, you will say a blessing for all kinds of reasons, and that will be part of what fills your day. And then you'll have these 3 primary check-ins that will be the meditative parts of your day. And then you will open and close with Shema, which is the way that we frame the day with the declaration of ultimate truth, which maybe gets back to Maimonides' first point, which is the foundation of all foundations, which is that there is an existence that precedes all existence. And the Shema really is that. But we don't spend a lot of time every day contemplating the nature of being in existence. We just don't have time for that. Instead, we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and we've affirmed our truth, right? And for some people, clearly that means I am Jewish. And for some people, that means I recognize the oneness of the universe. Different people have different experiences of the Shema, but in practice, ritually speaking, that's what we do. And that brings me to the last thing that I'll say tonight before I take some questions, which is that when you come home, what will you do when you come home? Well, first of all, you will kiss a mezuzah. And secondly, you will say the Shema again one more time. And you will say it, it's called Kriyat Shema al Hamitah. You'll say it as you get into bed. As you get into bed, and there are passages, you say the Shema, and then the idea is it's the last thing you say. Now, probably for a lot of people, there's chatter that goes on afterwards, and don't get anxious about that. But the idea is you should say the Shema as you're getting into bed. That's really the way it was meant to be said. And it was also meant to be said as you get up, but we sort of delay that Shema and we push it into our morning prayer most of the time. Although it's also true that if in the morning you're going to say the morning prayer later than the time of the Shema, which that would be 2:01. What are the actual times that you have to say it by? Let's not worry about that for today. But just as we close out the Jewish day, we'll cross that. Maybe we'll have been to synagogue 3 times, right? Or maybe once, or maybe not. But we'll have said blessings, and we'll have marked these 3 moments in our day, and then we'll come home and we'll acknowledge the mezuzah, right? Maybe we'll kiss the mezuzah, and we'll come in. We'll say hi to people. We'll have a wonderful evening. And then when we go to bed, we'll say the Shema again, and that will be the kind of the end bracket. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with, I would suggest, if we're just learning how to begin to bring a Jewish rhythm into our days, there are 3 basic structures to the Jewish day. The brackets, the Shema brackets, really, the Shema brackets of morning and evening. But also, when I say the brackets of morning and evening, I'm also talking about the fact that there are, in your home, there are little moments that get you ready for the day and that shut you down for the night. So all of the stuff we said, the Modeh Ani, the hand washing, the blessing of the bathroom, and then at the end of the night, the closing down and saying the Shema, all of these are kind of the brackets to our day. Then there are the 3 prayers in the middle. And if you are just getting started, then I really encourage you to just stop 3 times in your day and take deep breaths. That's a great start. And then maybe tomorrow you'll start saying prayers, and maybe, eventually you'll say every word in the Siddur, but 3 prayers in the middle, 3 check-ins, 3 prayers. And I really do feel like they're sort of check-ins in the middle of the day, and then blessings throughout, little blessings for the little moments of eating or of whatever comes up throughout the day that we encounter. Okay, so those are the basic building blocks of a Jewish day, of living a Jewish day. So now let me open it up for questions or comments. Maybe there's something else I forgot, an obvious part of the Jewish day that you're wondering, why was that not in there? And I'll either make an excuse for why I didn't include it, or I'll admit that you're right. Barbara, Aaron Price. Oh, let me, I may need to ask.
Okay, I'm here. You said that going to shul 2 or 3 times a day changed your life. In what way?
Well,
is that too personal?
Part of it for me was getting up that early. Like, whoa, I'm really taking this pretty seriously. Part of it is that what happens when you go to shul is that you very literally create a space for yourself to just be in prayer. And I pray most of my prayers at home, and that's great, but I'm also a little bit distracted by everything around me. And I'm also kind of rushing through it. And so it just gives me the space to stop. And then the other thing that it does quite powerfully, and there are many ways to talk about Jewish community, but I think one of the most powerful is the kind of community that you don't even talk to people in. That is, there's just a group of people that I show up and I perform these rites and rituals with every day. And some of them I will schmooze with, some of them I won't, but like we, from different points throughout our little town, we gathered together in this space so that we could enact this ancient rite, so that some of us can say Kaddish, so that we can all structure our day together. And you can do this alone. You can do this whole religion alone, but it's really not meant to be done alone. Yeah. So part of it is that, like, the way that this rhythm, the rhythm of gathering 3 times a day, brings us into community. It's checking in with God, it's checking in with me, but it's also checking in with all of you. Florine.
This may be a little esoteric. At the very beginning, you said we follow the rhythms of time, i.e. day, week, month, year, and our lifetime. But isn't the eternal life also part of that flow?
The eternal life? Say what you mean by that.
Well, if the soul is always moving through time, that would be part of the movement of the soul.
Yeah, I think, that's a very high level question, as usual, from my dear Florine. But I think that the answer, in a way, must be that the soul is beyond mitzvot. And like that part of the self that is eternal, one day will no longer do mitzvot. Mitzvot practice, action, embodiment. That's our time in this world. In this world, we are physical creatures seeking to infuse our lives with spiritual awakening. The soul is in the, so to speak, in the realm of the spirit. And with you, Florine, I believe that the soul is eternal and that there's a part of us that never dies. I really do believe that. But that part of us we can worry about, when our physical being dies. That part is not the part doing mitzvot.
So my second part of the question then would be, is that why the tzitzit is cut off of your talit before you are buried, to symbolize that you don't have
That's
to.
right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. Because the dead are no longer obligated in mitzvot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Obligation, I must say, I started with obligation and I want to end with obligation. Obligation is such an important concept in our tradition. And, a lot of people experience obligation unpleasantly. Like, what does it mean? Does God really want this stuff from me? And what does it mean that my life is mandated and I have to do things and I should feel guilty if I don't do them? That's not why obligation is such a central feature of our tradition. Obligation is a central feature of our tradition because if you don't have obligation, you won't do anything, right? I mean, some of us will, and some of us just take it on upon ourselves. But the notion of obligation is there to create a sense of I really should attend to these duties because this transforms my life. This gives me meaning. This gives me a rhythm. Rhythm, if nothing else, just a rhythm. But it's hard to establish a rhythm. And obligation is the force that I got to do this. I got to do this. Ariella?
Sarah Linsky has a question, can't figure out how to raise her hand, so I'm speaking on her behalf.
Okay.
Hey, thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, wow, this is fascinating. And first of all, I feel like I've been wanting something like this for years and found out about it 15 minutes before it started. So thank God for that.
Great.
I guess my two big questions are, first of all, I think that this is motivating to not get too caught up on the particulars and the details of how to do things, but just start and then, fill in from there. So that's good. And then my question is then, where do you learn the 201 once you start to do things? Then how do you fill in the more details and specifics? And my second question is similar, but how do you recommend learning the bracha, the core brachas, the Amidah, where that's the point in the day where I get to shul and feel like, oh, I'm an imposter because I am Jewish and I don't know what I'm doing here, even though I can kind of go through the motions. So where do I learn those two pieces?
Yeah. Okay, great. So great questions. Now, first of all, in terms of learning the basics of Jewish practice, in some ways, the answer is the Shulchan Aruch, like that, for that one of those first texts I started, when you get up in the morning, wake up like a lion. And then there are some famous commentaries on it, like the Mishnah Brura. I'm going to put these things in the chat. But I must say, if you're Judaism 101, Shulchan Aruch, then probably reading straight out of these things, 1550, Code of Jewish Law. And then commentary is the Mishnah Berurah. This is a helpful commentary on. But probably more useful will be one of these books, a kind of compendium that kind of takes you through Jewish practice. I'm trying to think of some good ones. Anybody want to put a good recommendation for one of these books that is just sort of primary Jewish practice? I can't think right now which ones in English I really like, but I will definitely come back next week and do that. And then the other thing in terms of learning the Amidah, it's in the Sidur, and the Sidur is probably your if there's one book that you should kind of keep with you because it'll have a lot of this information, it's the Sidur, the prayer book. And you can get one that has English, and you can get one that has, Cindy puts in Anita Diamant's Living a Jewish Life, which I've heard good things about. Ora puts in Blue Greenberg's How to Run a Jewish Household, which I've heard good things about. There's one other that I'm thinking of, but I can't remember, that I may mention later on. But anyway, so one of these books for your primary kind of Jewish practices, and then the Sidur has the texts in it, and sometimes they're in transliteration if you want that. But you can also just study the Hebrew, and I've become accustomed to saying this a lot. It's important to learn Hebrew, and we get scared or lazy when we think about what do you mean? I have to master another language in order to practice this religion? And the answer, so the bad news is you have to learn Hebrew. The good news is you don't have to learn that much Hebrew. Just knowing the Hebrew alphabet is hugely helpful in just being able to recognize what words are being said. And then little by little, you build and you build and you build. But the custom is, there are many prayer communities that sing the prayers also in English, but the custom generally is for our most sacred acts that we do them in the sacred tongue. So yeah, an Ulpan, a Hebrew 101 course should be right along with, this is like Jewish Practice 101. There's Hillel's doing a Trope 101 class, and surely a Hebrew 101 class should be part of your kind of Jewish like if you're an adult b'nai mitzvah, let's say, for example, the ways that you're strengthening your Jewish life. Okay. Any other questions? No questions? Okay. In that case, let's leave it here. I just want to end by encouraging, it's all too large a group. What I would like to do is, like, hear from all of you which pieces of this are resonating. And if I asked you, which of these practices would you like to start trying, right? I would like to go through all, who's left, 52 of you, and hear that from each of you. But instead, I'll just ask you to think about, if you've never done any of this before, again, I recommend Modeh Ani, start there. And if you've done that, maybe move to saying the Shema at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And in the Siddur, there are lists of, in most Siddurim, there are lists of blessings that you might say for food or for things throughout the day. There are all kinds of wonderful blessings. Blessings if you see a rainbow. Blessings if you hear thunder, right? Wonderful blessings to say. So the Siddur is a great place to learn those things. But whatever it is, maybe it's just kissing the mezuzah. Whatever it is, start your Jewish practice somewhere, just somewhere. And saying thank you in the morning can be a good place to start. But that's part of what it means to live in Jewish rhythms, is to live in gratitude, and to live in calm, and to live in peace of mind, and to live in connectedness to the great forces. Yes, it means all of the big things that Maimonides started off talking about, the foundation of all foundations, but the way we connect those things is not to sit and contemplate the meaning of existence all day long, but to infuse our lives with these practices. So is that Ellie raising a hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I just have a question about the trope class. Is it in Hebrew?
Oh,
that's an
it's
obvious.
not taught in Hebrew. No, it's not.
Oh, it isn't? Oh, good. Because I'm a musician of sorts, and I would love to learn the trope.
The trope class is also highly recommended. And if you're doing an adult b'nai mitzvah with us, this is some of the things that we're wanting you to move through, is a study of reading from the Torah, a study of basic Jewish practices, study of the prayers, a study of Hebrew. It's like we're covering some of the basics here. Anyway, we're off to a good start. This has been One Jewish Day, and next week we will talk about the next unit of time, the next great cycle, maybe the greatest cycle in Jewish time of all, which is the Jewish week. It's just Shabbat, isn't it? Well, not exactly. So we'll talk about that next week. All right. Bye, everyone. Wishing you a happy Jewish evening. All right.
You, Rabbi Kasher.
Farewell. See y'all next week.